Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something pretty incredible. We're mapping out the end of the world. Specifically, we're going to dig into the striking similarities and the really fascinating differences in how the world's two largest religions envision the end of times. We're basically going to stitch together biblical and Islamic eschatology into one single epic narrative. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be tracking this shared storyline through 5 main phases. First, a world in chaos. Second, the rise of the deceiver. Third, the return of Jesus. Fourth, a golden age and final battle. And lastly, judgment and shared hope. All right, let's jump right into phase 1, a world in chaos. So, before any wild cosmic stuff happens, both the Bible and Islamic tradition actually completely agree on the setup. Humanity is going to face a severe moral and spiritual collapse, and this widespread corruption inevitably leads to massive global turmoil. The New Testament warns of deception, natural disasters, and wars, calling them birth pains. Meanwhile, Islamic sources describe a cataclysmic global conflict known as the Great War, or Al-Malamaha Kubra. It's essentially the ultimate societal breakdown. Now, right about here is where the paths briefly take a detour. The biblical narrative doesn't explicitly name a specific preparatory leader before the final events kick off. But Islam introduces a really unique figure, the Mahdi. He's described as a righteous leader whose exact purpose is to step up, unite believers, and establish a baseline of justice right before the greatest trials hit. So, with the world basically turning upside down and global instability peaking, both texts predict someone is going to arrive to exploit that chaos. But who exactly leads this ultimate global deception? That brings us to phase 2, the rise of the deceiver. This is where we meet the ultimate global antagonist, and man, the descriptions here are starkly different. In the Bible, you have the man of lawlessness, commonly known as the Antichrist, which is often interpreted as a heavily symbolic, political, and religious deceiver. But Islamic tradition describes Al-Masih ad-Dajjal as a vividly physical, one-eyed imposter, and in an incredibly specific detail. The texts say he travels the entire world in exactly 40 days, performing false miracles, but is physically blocked from entering the cities of Mecca and Medina. But even with those physical differences, both traditions are on the exact same page about one terrifying reality. This deceiver represents the absolute peak of global spiritual deception. We're not just talking about a political crisis here. Both texts completely agree that this is the greatest trial in human history, specifically designed to test the faith of even the most devout believers.
Okay, moving on to phase 3, the return of Jesus.
Right at the absolute height of this global deception, when things literally couldn't get any worse, we hit the climax of our shared narrative, the physical descent of Jesus back to earth. The Bible emphasizes a glorious heavenly descent, returning as divine judge and king. Islamic eschatology, on the other hand, provides highly specific sequential details. It says he descends at the white minaret in Damascus, supported by angels, arriving exactly at dawn. And in a remarkable moment, upon arriving, Jesus actually joins the believers and prays behind the Mahdi, which underscores his role as a servant of God. And let me tell you, in both accounts, this arrival is the ultimate turning point. He directly confronts and destroys the deceiver. The Bible states he defeats the Antichrist simply with the breath of his mouth. Islam gives us a specific geographic location, noting Jesus personally defeats the Dajjal at the Gate of Lud. The whole idea is that ultimate deception is finally vanquished by divine truth. With the antagonist defeated, Jesus initiates a powerful correction of belief. According to Islamic tradition, this even includes symbolically breaking the cross to establish divine law. So, with the bad guy gone and truth restored, we have to ask, what does the world actually look like next? Let's look at phase 4, a golden age and final battle. We finally get to take a breath here. We enter the falling action of our timeline, which is an unprecedented earthly golden age. Look at these shared characteristics. We're talking about the complete eradication of poverty, perfect harmony in nature, and divine justice prevailing worldwide. The Bible often interprets this numerically as a literal 1,000-year millennial reign. Islam describes it qualitatively as an era of absolute abundance, peace, and total prosperity. But, it couldn't just stay peaceful forever, right? Both traditions agree on a final, violent rebellion led by Gog and Magog, or Yajuj and Majuj in Islam. Now, these aren't your normal armies. They are massive, chaotic tribes who swarm in, consume resources, and literally destroy entire ecosystems. Human armies absolutely cannot stop them. They are only destroyed by direct divine intervention after Jesus prays. Now, here is a super interesting distinction. What actually happens to Jesus after this? Well, in Islamic tradition, Jesus lives on earth for about 40 years post-return. He lives a completely normal life, gets married, and eventually dies a natural death, completing a full earthly cycle. The Bible, conversely, remains largely silent on any kind of post-return, natural earthly lifespan. Which leads us to our final phase, judgment and shared hope. After all these epic earthly events, the very fabric of the universe starts to fracture. Both sources point to some truly bizarre cosmic signs. The Bible mentions the sun darkening and stars falling. Islam adds the sun rising from the west, the emergence of the beast of the earth, and the ultimate sounding of the trumpet by the angel Israfil. Reality just rapidly moves toward its sudden conclusion, the day of judgment, where ultimate accountability is realized for all of humanity.
So, if we take a step back and synthesize the core structural differences we've covered today, Islam's narrative is sequentially detailed and highly physical. It gives us the Mahdi, a vividly descriptive Dajjal, and a 40-year natural lifespan for Jesus. The Bible's account, on the other hand, is often more compressed, symbolically rich, and leaves certain post-return earthly details undefined.
But honestly, as we trace this whole timeline from moral decay to cosmic renewal, the underlying architecture between these two global faiths is just profound, and the message is completely unmistakable. Because both texts share this incredibly unified core philosophy. History isn't just random, it has a deliberate direction. Evil might reach a terrifying peak, sure, but it ultimately fails. Jesus plays a decisive, central role in both accounts. Truth will always prevail over deception. And maybe most importantly, the end of the world is not about permanent chaos. It is about the realization of ultimate justice. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. We live in a modern world that is so often hyper-focused on religious and political divides. We hear about it constantly. But when you step back and look at the source material, what does it mean that billions of people across both Christianity and Islam share the exact same hope for ultimate divine justice? Thank you so much for exploring this timeline with me on This Explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.